Happy Few is a case of art mimicking real life. It's a post-apocalyptic game of a sort, taking place in an alternate 1960s in which Germany won the Second World War and most of Britain has been bombed out. One side of the world is a bright, vibrant, happy-go-lucky place where anything can happen and unicorns are the national dish or something. The other side is a dark, drab, dreary hell on earth, and that is where the real-world similarities lie. The campaign raised $340,000 Canadian dollars on Kickstarter, with much fanfare and interest, and rightfully so. The original pitch looked great, and a demo for the early access version at E3 2016 showcased what looked like a pretty much finished game. But then the early beta came out, and even keeping in mind its early state, it still bombed. The game's once prominent supporters, such as Jim Sterling, Nerdcubed, and that one that yells a lot, all played it and found it, well, lackluster to say the least. Even our own Joanna Mueller joined the chorus, saying there was much work to be done yet, and wondering what the chances were of the developer turning things around. There certainly are a few of us happy with how things are turning out. Oh, that was good. I should have led with that sooner.
You get to explore its lore and history, and you discover how it got to be the way that it is.
I believe you brought a clip.
That's right, we brought a clip.
Roll the clip.
Clip, clip.
It all started back in 1945 when... It started with developer Compulsion Games launching a Kickstarter for a survival post-apocalyptic game in June 2015. At least, it was supposed to be. Gone are the grey-brown exteriors, the zombies, or any form of monsters. This game wasn't going to throw you in an empty open world without any story or explanation. This was going to be a story-driven, psychedelic look at a survival in a world, still full of people, gone mad. And also drugs. Your goal was to survive and escape Wellington Wells, the gorgeous town modeled after Super Mario Kart's Rainbow Road. Everything from the aesthetics, the drug mechanic, the equally funny and creepy narrated character, and of course the people, all made We Happy Few so much more than just a survival game. Developer Compulsion Games isn't new or inexperienced. Their last game was Contrast, a game with a proper console release and big budget and all the works like that. Much like We Happy Few, it was a highly produced, well-crafted experience. Before that, they also helped on development of Darksiders and Dungeons & Dragons Daggerdale, which very well could be the name of Kanye West and Kim Kardashian's next child. They did that work to secure funding to create Contrast before landing publisher Focus Home Entertainment, so they knew what they were getting into by going to Kickstarter, and they had a great reason to do so since they didn't get credited on either of those games. Kickstarter, in doing what it should do, allowed an established developer a new avenue to pursue funding for a great idea. Like with so many Kickstarter pages these days, you have to scroll past the stretch goals and update stuff at the start. Once you do, you'll find the original pitch, this one starting with a trailer and a great one at that. It starts with a dude in creepy face paint, Uncle Jack as he's called, presenting some kind of equally creepy TV news show of some kind. The 1950s vibe is in full effect, and you slowly start to figure out what this game is about. Jack talks to us about a pill simply called Joy, a drug that makes you happy, go figure. But there is of course more to it than that. In reality, the drug is a powerful hallucinogenic that makes its users see bright colors, happy faces, and even hear upbeat music. On top of that, you're required by this world's law to take the pill, or you'll be beaten to death by many, many guards. As you probably figured out by now, you play as a guy who decided to not take the pill, a downer as they're called, and is determined to escape the city. Actually, you play as multiple characters thanks to a funding goal, but we'll come on to that later. This trailer is a powerful opening to the Kickstarter. It's always great to see a developer open their campaign with gameplay, but when a trailer looks this professionally made, and the game looks this great right out of the gate, there's simply no way it'll fail. Well, that's my hot take of the day anyway. What this does is shows that the developers are confident in what they're making, as well as competent. They're not simply throwing pre-made Unity Store assets together or using some crude MS Paint drawings. They've got professional artists, programmers, actors, and more working on this, and that is who you're giving your money to. It also demonstrates how committed the team is to the game. They've made all of this, even hired an actor to play Jack, using money out of their own pockets. Nobody would spend that kind of cash on something that looks like this if they weren't serious or if they didn't care. What do you say I finally shut up about the trailer and talk about the rest of the page? The first paragraph under the trailer really sets the tone for what you're about to see. We Happy Few is a tale of a plucky bunch of slightly terrible people trying to escape from a lifetime of cheerful delusion. Set in a drug-fueled, retro-futuristic city in alternate history 1964 England, you'll have to blend in with other citizens who don't take kindly to people who don't abide by their not-so-normal rules. Although, to be fair, at this point we don't actually know what the game is about. The page so far is a little unclear about that. Luckily, the very next paragraph assuages those fears. It's a first-person game set in a procedurally generated full 3D city that you must escape before society collapses around you. But, like any good roguelike, you're probably going to die a few times before you figure out how it all works. So it is an open-world survival roguelike game, but not in the traditional sense. There is civilization, and there's plenty of food, water, and beds. But instead of surviving against monsters, you're surviving against an oppressive government, and the brainwashed people living there. Gee, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Anyway, that's what originally made this game so interesting. It was putting a unique twist on a somewhat tired trope, and of course the gorgeous visuals helped as well. It's less about surviving in an empty world and more about trying to blend into society while making a sort of prison break. It's a fascinating dynamic, and one that got Compulsion Games nearly $250,000 to play with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's important you understand the concept that was being pitched in order to understand what ultimately went wrong. There's more text written slightly in the character of one of the townspeople, which further explains the gameplay and what really sets it apart. In We Happy Few, your main minute-to-minute need is to avoid suspicion. See, so it's not about getting food or water or avoiding monsters. The Wellies really hate downers and are very touchy if they think you might be one. But if you don't draw too much suspicion, they'll just wish you a lovely day for it. That was my British accent. And go on about their day. Do as the Wellies do and you should be fine. However, if you act like a naughty downer and, say, break into a house in front of them, they'll desperately want to make sure you take your joy with extreme violence if necessary, and all their friends will help them. Ha ha ha, oh what fun. There's also the line that really hammers the premise of the game home. This isn't stealth, this is hiding in plain sight. We Happy Few is a game about blending in while you look for a way to escape. Again, the game is about trying to blend in and escape and avoid combat rather than filling hunger and thirst meters. Combat is in the game, but it's difficult. You don't have many weapons, you can't take much damage, and you'll always be outnumbered. That's where your other option comes into play. Sure, you could try and play it like Metal Gear and stealth around everyone, although that's impractical. You could take joy pills and blend in, though if you take too much and are on it too long, you'll pass out or turn into one of them. You could just pretend you're on joy by acting happy, but you better not stay any one place too long. You could also craft items that'll help you out or steal stuff. The possibilities are endless. Oh, and would you look at that, there's another trailer on the page, but this one is nothing but gameplay, and it's 15 freaking minutes long. Hell yeah. You know, it's one thing for an announcement trailer, but 15 minutes of pure gameplay this early in development? If you weren't sold on the game by this point, nothing would sell you on it. It might not be your kind of game, but you could at least admit this was looking like a solid investment, at least as solid as you can get on Kickstarter. Oh, and the characters, that's where this continues to be interesting. Most survival games just stick you in an open world without much story, and often with a boring silent protagonist, but not We Happy Few, oh no. Here you actually play as multiple characters, each with their own storylines that all converge sooner or later. As the page reads, they are all flawed and not particularly heroic, wrapped up by the trauma their world has been through. They are haunted by terrible things they've done in the past, and they each have something they urgently need to accomplish. Interesting. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm advertising this game too much my boyish enthusiasm, but I really loved what they were selling with this. I didn't actually back it myself because I was in a rough patch financially at the time, but I would have if I had the chance, and to be honest, I'm actually kind of glad I didn't. Although the game was funded, things did not turn out well once the game hit early access. Not by a long shot.
Everyone in Wellington Wells is doing exactly what he or she ought to. Smiling and laughing and taking their joy. What about you?
That's right. I'm talking to you. Are you doing what you should? Of course you are. After all, you're not a downer, are you? We know what to do about downers, don't we?
There isn't anything all that unusual about what happens next. A developer promised the world on a Kickstarter campaign, the game comes out, in early access in this case, and is actually terrible, and then they promise to fix things. It happens all the time, but in this case it seems particularly deflating because of the wasted potential. Instead of hiding in plain sight, the player's reduced to running in circles trying to figure out what to do. Instead of occasionally crafting supplies to solve a problem, you have to craft or repair broken items constantly, with supplies that are sometimes impossible to find. You're right about the combat though. It certainly is unpleasant with its weapons that break after only 2 or 3 uses, and getting utterly swarmed by every enemy on the map at once. Then there are the other things we could talk about, like how the food, hydration, and sleep meters drain too quickly, or how the crafting menu is terrible. I think Jim Sterling and Many a True Nerd pointed out this game's flaws best. Sterling ran into a mission that made it literally impossible to progress, as he had to craft an item, but several of the ingredients needed to craft that item didn't spawn in. Many a True Nerd, meanwhile, talked about how the game was simply boring, how he experienced everything there was in the game in a matter of minutes. Interestingly, both of them have completely different ideas of how to fix the game. Sterling thinks it can be saved with a few tweaks here and there, while MATN thinks the game needs to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. Those two aren't alone either. Across the board, the reception of the early access has been absolutely terrible by critics, all echoing the same feeling. It was just released too early. The highly touted story mode isn't present, missions are seemingly unable to be completed, and there just isn't anything to do. But that was all months ago. How have Compulsion Games taken the criticism, and what are they up to now? The answers are good, and not much, at least publicly. Their forums exploded at first with feedback, mostly negative, but also mostly constructive. I remember doing a video and a follow-up article and thinking to myself how well Compulsion was handling it all, always replying that they were adding suggestions and complaints to their lists of things to look at. But again, that was months ago, August to be exact, and now that it's December, it's been 8 years of silence. 3.5 months, right. Same thing, right? Suggestions and complaints are still being aired in the Compulsion forums, and the developers are keeping on top of it. Updates are still being published with incredible frequency on the Kickstarter as well, about 3 or 4 a month. But in terms of the actual game, not much has actually changed yet. Not that that's necessarily a problem. Frankly, the game is so riddled with issues and bugs, you can't expect it to be fixed in the matter of weeks or even months. But they are working on it, and they are still asking for feedback as well. Looking at the update page on Kickstarter, you can see they were releasing some small updates. They fixed bugs, they've worked on the confusing crafting system, and they've promised a massive patch in 2 weeks, meaning I picked a terrible time to write this episode. Maybe I'll play the update and let you know what's changed and if it's any better. Probably not. Is We Happy Few a promising campaign, or an orange nightmare from another dimension that's somehow become president? As usual, the truth lies somewhere in between. Compulsion Games clearly care about what they're doing, and they're seeking opinions, however bad, and they're taking them to heart. There's a lot of promise here in both them and the game itself, but as it stands, We Happy Few isn't very good. Unless you want to get involved in the parade of negative feedback, just wait until the game is finally finished, or at least some progress is being made. Keep an eye on the updates, see what people who already have the game think of it, and wait. I do hope Compulsion Game can turn it around, and they seem more than capable of it, but still, you should wait. Thus, the risk of backing a game on Kickstarter. Now, I don't mean to presume, I do, but I actually had a little hand in the development of this game myself. Sort of. Well, I say development, but all I did was send an email. Jim Sterling, thank God for him, tweeted about the game and even did a Let's Play of the Kickstarter demo on his channel. That's where I learned about this game first, as this was before I started writing for Clickist. He was first getting into voice acting and he really liked the game, so I sent an email to Compulsion Games telling them he was interested and attached a voice acting demo reel of his.
I'm not your baby! I am, if you want me to be. I'm here for you, James. See? I'm real!
I actually got a response from a community manager or someone there telling me they weren't aware of his interest and saying they would reach out to him. And they did indeed give him a part in the game, and while his character isn't in the early access version yet, he will still be there. Presumably, he actually was really harsh on the game when it hit early access and said he didn't know if they'd keep him out because of that. I would assume Compulsion isn't that petty, but I guess you never know. So there, that's my fun story. Wait until I do an episode on Sunless Sea for another wacky story from Uncle Josh.